So we have understood the importance of functions. We have seen how does functions are considered as first class objects by understanding important properties. We have also seen how variables declared inside a function and above a function behave, where we have understood the concept of global variables and local variables, right? What if, where if you want to pass some group of elements like numbers or strings, in the format of group, we have also seen the concept of variable length and keyword variable length arguments, right? If it is upon the case, you can use them. If it's in the format of keywords, you can go for double star quarks. If it is in the format of multiple arguments like position mattering, where we can go for star arcs. But even if you remember the importance of comprehension, you can pass the elements in the format of group in this way, where you can take multiple input from a user, you pass them into a list. That's what we have seen the importance of comprehension, where we have taken expression for the variable in the sequence. We have just discussed about this in the beginning of this series of videos. We have seen the importance of comprehension. Just remind it, if you have forgot it, just previously watch the video again, because that plays a very key role. And now we are going to use that concept again, where if I want the input in the format of integer, I keep here int of x. Otherwise, I'll go for float or I'll go for str of x, right? Now we'll use that logic and we'll try to calculate total and average when a user pass multiple values. Suppose if you're taking total number of marks and their average, or if you're giving number of person details, person salaries and what is the average salary, anything, right? Now let's go for that. So I'll be using the same ideally, I'll be just continuing there itself. So if I don't want to use this, what do? I just remove triple quotes here and I just start from here. So the concept is passing group of elements to a function, because if we use multiple things, then depending on problem statement, you will come to a conclusion. Because always I'll tell you a very simple concept. If you are good at writing function in Python, it's done. You won't believe me, but that's where it plays a very key role. How do you try to use the control statements and conditional statements? That's where people differ. So just make that thing in mind. So what do? Is my problem statement is where I try to take accept input from a user, accept input from a user, or accept a group of numbers and find their sum and average. That's what, or total, whatever you say, where you can consider it in the format of a person giving their salary details and their average, whatever it's, whatnot, you can go ahead anything. So for this, I need to use my comprehension technique. If you just, if you want, I'll just revise the same thing here by just writing the syntax for it. The syntax which we have discussed about the list comprehension is, that's where we have understood how do we take multiple values from a user as an input, where you have taken, if it is in the format of square braces, what happens over there? So we just make up the expression here. So expression for variable in sequence. Here our sequence could be taking input from a user. That's the reason I'll be using split function, where we have also seen this optional conditions. How do we make sure that, how do we write optional for and, or if we are customized, we can just customize the program. It's up to user logic. How does it try to use this comprehension? Because even you write a for loop, you get the same technique, but once we go ahead for large amount of data, it's not the for loop being used, it's a technique of comprehension. So just make sure that you are good at that. And even we'll see what we have done when we have taken parenthesis here, we have just converted the tuple to list comprehension. But now we'll understand that concept with generators, which we'll be seeing in the next series of videos. So first, we need to define a function. So my function name is basically, I am trying to take it as calculate, because I am trying to calculate, right? So I take calculate here. I just pass something. I just give x here, because I am trying to take multiple input from a user. So I just pass some dummy value over there. So I'll give my description. My description is to find total and average, description or the doc string. There you go. Now you will write multiple changes here, because the first thing is, you don't know how many values user will give, but you are expecting that x is in the format of a list. right? If you use square braces, that becomes list comprehension, curly braces set, and if you pass pairs, that is dictionary comprehension, which we have seen about each one of them. Now, the first thing is I need to know the length of that sequence. So, what do? I just give len of x. That's where to know the length of sequence. So, based on that only we start our problem statement execution. So, to know the length of sequence. So, n is equal to length of x. You need to create a variable, right, to store the sum. So, I declare d is equal to 0. So, this is the variable to store sum, because we have already done the same kind of concept to store variable to store the sum. So, d is equal to 0. There you go. You start writing your control statement. So, I give for I in, what is our list here? N. So, I take n, not n is length, sorry. What is your list here? X. So, for I in x, what do? You just try to update the sum. So, d is equal to d plus I, because I is each and every value, and then what you are trying to calculate over there. Let me make here d is sum, then what do? I need to calculate average. So, I define average is equal to, what is sum here? D by what is the total number of values you are trying to give. So, based on length, that's where you take here as n. So, d by n, that's it. So, finally, what do? You just try to return average. So, you just return both sum and average. Even though we are getting mistakes at the end, we'll just rectify it, because wantedly I'll be giving some things. So, you need not worry about that. So, d can be treated as sum and average is average. Now, what do? We try to take a group of statements from user. Take a group of statements, nothing but group of values. That's what we are trying to give. Take a group of integers or what, because generally I'm trying to calculate total and average, so I expect only integers. That is the reason I only make int of x. So, to take a group of integers from keyboard, so what do? I just make some customized things here. So, I give print of enter the values or enter the numbers. I'll just give hint for user, enter the numbers clearly. I'm not clearly, enter the numbers, it's fine. So, enter the numbers. Then what do? I just take input here. What is our input I'm trying to take? X is equal to square brace of, that's where we take int of x. So, this is how you are passing multiple elements. So, int of x for x in, you just give input of, what do you try to give? Just make sure you give some int to the user, enter the values, and if you are trying to give empty split, just make it simple. I will be discussing what is empty split, and we have already seen that part, but I will make it very simple here. So, here you are having two variables here, d and average. So, just take two variables for the function call. That's what, right? So, a comma b is equal to, what is the function name? Calculate of. So, function name is calculate of, take the input as x. That's it. Then if you wanted to print individually, print of total is. So, total is, just make sure that give an a, because we are taking return d and average. So, then I just give average is, so keep up b. As I told you, these whatever you take return d and average, so you are returning two values. So, take up two variables for function call first. Now, let's try to execute this and come to a conclusion. How does the values will change? Because I gave split of empty, that means you should not give any commas or anything, just pass directly. When I execute this, I'll pass, enter the values 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 5. Okay, there you go. What is total? Total is 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 5. Average is same. What happened over there? Because there is clearly a blunder. That's where you need to cross check, because wantedly I gave you, I need to cross check, because we just need to make sure whatever mistakes we do, we need to just rectify them. That's where we learn from the mistakes, right? So, here define calculate of x, n is equal to length of x. So, sum is 0 for I in x. So d equal to d plus I, average is equal to d by n, return d of which. So split of nothing present. So that means whether it is passing same value or not, right? It is passing same value. Nothing is being happening over there. Okay. Let me give some space at least. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now you got some difference here. What did you get over there? Because whenever you pass split without any quotations or anything, that means you should pass empty space. Previously you did not pass anything. That's where whatever you give here, 1, 2, 3, you get same. Total is 1 to 3, average is 1 to 3.2 because you are passing only one value. So length will be 1. So 123 by 1 is 123. But you are doing here floating division. That is the reason that answer is in float value. That's where you need to make sure debug it very clearly. So this means you need to pass empty space. That means you need to give one space. 1, 4, 5, 8. Okay. What is the sum you should get? 4 plus 1, 5, 10, 18, right? No, again total is 1 and average is 0.425. Clearly a blunder. Yes, because you see it happens only in function logic, because you say for I in x d equal to d plus I. So d has become the first value what we gave, average is d by n. But what it is returning? You are inside the for loop only. You should come out. That's where it will take multiple values now. You see? I pass 1, 4, 5, 8, 5, 8, sorry, 5, 8. There you go. 5 plus 4, 9, 10, 18. What is sum? It is 18. What is average? 18 by 4, that is 4.5. Clearly you find a difference here, because that's where return play a very key role when you are defining the values inside a function. Make it very simple. Okay, you should give some suggestions to the user while entering input. Then you just make sure you give split with commas. That's where generally we follow, but for your understanding, I did not give anything in the beginning. Now make sure you ask user to enter multiple values. There you go. You have given these many values, you got average because you gave floating division. That's how you can give multiple values. And even if you wanted to give any marks like 75, 85, 95, 60 and 48 and 56. Okay, what is total? It is 419, average is 69%. In that way we can take. So that means we are passing here multiple values because x has become a list here. So in this way, if you want to pass a string, group of strings, just keep in place of int of x, you can pass str of x, or you can just take direct input. But make sure that when you're passing the string, just give it how do you trying to separate it. That's where we place a very key role. And even you can take float values also. You can take multiple input from a user. That's where you use this comprehension technique, and split plays a very key role, because if you don't give commas and go ahead like this 1, 2, 4, 5, 8, clearly it throws an error called as value error, because we have given split as commas. But how can you give spaces here, right? That is the reason invalid literal for integer with base 10. So that's where when you pass group of elements to a function, make sure you are passing in list. That's where it is easier, because when you give print of type of x, you can clearly understand the type is list, and make sure you give split with commas. That's where generally we human beings write, right? So we generally split numbers by commas. 1, 4, 2, 5, 8. It's as simple as it. The class is list. You got total and you got average, because I have combined all the things. We have seen how variable assigned to a function, and we are taking multiple input from a user, floating division, importance of return, for loop. So this is the very good program. So make sure that if you are confident with the logic of the function, then you can write in any way. So make sure you understand the concept of comprehensions. How do you pass multiple values into a function, where if you want to take a string, just make sure that you define that, whether if it is individual input, you can directly mention it as string. That's the best way. Or if you want to take float values, make it as float of x here, or directly string str of x. It's up to user, because even if you don't mention str of x, already if you take x, You are taking input of values here, so it clearly understands you are passing some strings. That's it. So in that way, you can explore multiple, you can understand how do you pass multiple values to a function, that is passing group of elements to a function. So that's where we have understood how do we pass multiple elements by revising the concept of comprehension, mainly list comprehension, because we understood how does we can represent those square braces clearly.